So let's say you're using Scratch for the first time and you're new to all of the layouts and you want to know how it all works and what you can do with it. So that's what this video is going to be about. I'm going to split into 4 parts. The first is the stage, the second will be the sprites, the third will be the backdrop, the fourth will be the code. Okay? So, for the first part, we have our stage here, and this is basically whoever's seeing our project is going to see. This is where everything happens visually. So you'll notice I can drag this sprite, this cat around, right? So that's where the sprite tab comes in. So we have our cat that exists in this world. So I can move the cat around, and this is where the properties are. So I can select if it's showing or it's not showing, so like if it's visible or not. I can change its X and Y. I can move it left and right, changing the X and then the Y up and down, right? So if we want to set it to the center, we can set it to 0, and we can set the Y to 0. And then we have our direction. Basically, you can rotate it all around, like this, 360 degrees to choose from. But there are also other rotating styles. So there's the left and right style. You'll notice that as I turn this protractor, it's always looking right. But if I turn it the other way, suddenly Scratchcat is looking to the left. So you can use this. So in games. And then we have the don't rotate, the do not rotate. So basically Scratchcat will never rotate at all. By default, we're always going to be in the all-around style. So you can, if you want to set the direction back to 90, you select this and you set it to 90. Then we have our size. So this is basically how big our cat is going to be. 100 is the default, which stands for 100%. So if we set it to 50, half of 100, it would become half the size. And 200, same thing, it becomes double the size. By default, it's at 100. So right now, we only have our Scratchcat, you know? Only one thing here. Let's say we want more sprites. You can go ahead and here press choose a sprite, and you have this whole category of sprites to choose from. So let's say, for example, I take Giga here, and now we have 2 sprites. So now our Scratchcat right now is named Sprite 1. And let's say we want a bit of clarity on that. So people viewing our sprites, you know, let's say they see it in the editor, they'll know what's going on. And also, you'll know if you happen to come back to the project like way later. So our cat is called Sprite 1. Let's say we want to change it to cat, and now you'll notice it says cat on our sprite name. So you're going to select this and type cat, and it also says cat here, so it's all visible for us. Okay? Now, let's say I wanted 2 cats. So what I would do is I would right click and I'd press duplicate. Now we have 2 cats. I could, you know, change the X, change the direction, change the size to be 150. But let's say I wanted the cat to be entirely different. We have our costumes here. So we have, as you can see, by default, two sprites. One, the legs are in this position, and the other looks like Scratch Cat is walking. This is the walking animation. You'll notice if I switch between the costumes fast enough, it'll look like Scratch Cat is walking. A costume is what our sprite looks like at that moment. It's like if you were wearing a costume at Halloween or something. If you were wearing a costume of Scratch Cat, you would look like Scratch Cat. So that's basically what's going on here. Since it's supposed to look like this, it's showing up like on the stage. Okay. Now let's go over to Giga. Right? So we have multiple sprites for Giga. So if we duplicate it, we can go ahead and change it to Giga Beat, and now they look different. Okay, so now here's another way you can create sprites. You can paint them. This will create an empty sprite. You can mess around with the editor. You can draw squares. You can draw lines. You can draw circles. You can even draw a line. Right? So right now, I don't really want this here, so we could go ahead and delete it, right? But our sprite is still here, so to fully delete it, let's say we don't want it to be here anymore, we can press this trash can and it's gone. Now we have two clones of Giga and two clones of Scratch Cat. Let's say we just wanted one of each, so we would delete those. Okay. Now, for right now, we don't really need Giga here, so we can send Giga off. Now we have our backdrops. So for backdrops, by default, it's a white screen. So this here. The backdrop is like the setting. What's behind all of our sprites. So if we wanted to change the backdrop, we could go here and press choose the backdrop, and we have a whole selection of backdrops to choose from. Let's say we want a farm, right? And same thing as the costume editor for sprites, they're the same thing, except backdrops don't move. They're still pictures. So we can't actually drag our backdrop. And if you notice, if I put this circle here behind Scratch Cat, it will appear behind Scratch Cat and not in front or do some Z fighting, right? Because backdrop is always going to be behind all of our sprites. Now, alright. So before I go to the code here, there was this one mention I forgot to mention, and it's the sound. We can play various sounds we want. So Scratch Cat by default is always going to have the meow sound, but we could also add more sounds, like piano, right? We could also record our voice like this. Hello world. Wait, what? Why isn't it'll record your voice, and it'll put it here. So if you ever choose to do the record option, it'll put a recording of your voice there with upload, right? You could upload a sound from your computer, right? We're not going to do that right now. Same thing for backdrop. Each sprite has its own individual sounds. So let's say we have Amon here. He does not have the meow sound like Scratch Cat does. He has the pop sound, but we could give him more sounds, like a guitar. Now you may be wondering, when our player is playing, they're not going to be dragging our sprites around. That's, just not a game at all. So, what we have here is our code. Now, if you wanted to put your scratch cat in the center, you could do it the normal way, put x0, y0, but what you can also do is you can go here and put go to x0 and y0. This is from the motion tab. So this is how scratch cat's position is. If we go ahead over to the looks tab, you can change how scratch cat looks. You can change the size by 10, and you can also down the size by 10, right? We can control everything from here. We have sounds. We can play the piano. We could detect when something is happening, when the green flag is clicked. So the green flag is the starting point for every game. So if I put one green flag click, go to x0, y0, on the green flag, scratch cat will always go to the center. Right? And now we have our control. This basically controls everything. We have our wait. I mean, how would you make a game without a waiting? Unless you're making it frame-based, right? And then, so, let's say I wanted to wait 1 second before gliding to a random position. So it would wait 1 second and glide off to the side. I mean, it's a random position, so not always to the side, but, not really important. So, we have our stop all block. This means everything in our game will all stop at once. That, we can also stop the current script this is on. So, let's say we, also one thing I forgot to mention, on repeat loops, they repeat every frame. So you can see, it repeating in the editor, right? So if we put stop the script here, it'll stop, right? So if we put this without stop script, it's gonna go everywhere. If we put stop this script, it'll only go to one place because it's stopping before it can repeat the rest of it. Alright, so now we have our sensing. This basically detects things like if it's touching the mouse pointer or something else, distance to something, if a key is pressed, if we're clicking our mouse X and Y and all that stuff. Then we have our operators, basically our math here. We can get a random number. Every time I click this, I'll get a random number. We can detect if something is bigger than something else or equal to something else. And then we can detect if something is true or false. And with that, we can make AND operators or operators, not operators. They're basically self-explanatory. And then we have our join. This joins two words. So it'll say apple, banana, because we're joining apple and banana. There's a space here, so that there's a space between them. And I'll show which letter and stuff like that. And then we have our variables. You can store things in variables. You can store numbers, you can store letters, you can store words. And then basically Scratch will remember that for you so that when you go back to it, it'll say that. So right now, my variable is at 0. If you click this tick here, it'll show it in the stage. So if I set my variable to 5, it'll show that there, and it'll say that my variable is 5. And we have lists. We can make a list of variables. Let's say list, right? We can add things to our list. It's like a grocery list, And then we have our make a block. We won't be going over that in this section. Alright, so right now you'll notice I'm not logged in, but any of you who are logged in will see an orange share button somewhere around here. If you click that, everyone will be able to see your project, experience it, So you can share things you have made instead of just keeping them here. You can make really anything with Scratch, you know? You can make games, you can make animation, you can make music. Like, let's say I wanted to make the piano sound repeat forever, or the meow sound. It would do that. Right? So, that's basically the UI of Scratch. You're going to need to know this. Right? So, let's just recap. The stage is everything we have. Our sprites are what are on the stage. And they're going to appear there. Right? We can hide and show them. We can change their X and Y, their size, their direction. We can play sounds with them. And the backdrop, it's what behind everything else. Right? And then we have our sounds. The sounds of each sprite. Right? And then we have our code that basically controls everything we do, everything that happens in the game. Controls what the player can do with sensing, right? We can detect if the player is clicking something, or we can detect that in events. When this sprite clicked, you could say start sound, and it'll like piano, and when we click our Scratch Cat, it'll play the piano. So that's basically all you need to know to get started with coding with Scratch. This is the knowledge you're going to need to be able to navigate Scratch and all of its menus in the editor. The website's something different, right? So, I hope you enjoyed that explanation. Goodbye.